what is your opinions, or what do you think is going to be happening with some of the peace talks that have been going on, and what has been happening in the past? What have we seen in the past, and yeah, what are we looking at now?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. In the modern day here, the U.S. has been trying to, negotiate in that region there. Two people that I was around a lot was Ambassador Dennis Ross. I was doing protection on him in the early 90s when I was with our counter surveillance groups there. And his deputy was Aaron Miller. And they used to make numerous trips back and forth. So he did his whole career in as a Middle East special envoy, trying to get that. He's got several books out there. And significant, I was agent in charge with Secretary Albright's protective detail.
Yeah.
And we were in up at Camp David, July of 2000. And that was peace talks that was brokered by President Clinton. And Secretary Albright was there, and Prime Minister Barak from Israel, and PLO Arafat were there. And basically, they were up there, I don't know, 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. And, there was a cloak for no cell phones, and, they were being jammed, so they couldn't go back and forth. And they wanted all the participants to really, get down and, start getting down to, where the rubber meets the road. A couple significant things there were the president left for 3 or 4 days on something came up. And I remember him telling Albright, Secretary Albright, hey, make sure they don't leave, and, they were negotiating all this one. And at the end, Prime Minister Barak had made a lot of concessions, and it was on the plate for the PLO, which was Arafat at the time, to just accept that. And it was as far as they've ever gone before. And they really thought they were going to come to some kind of Middle East peace talks with the PLO at that time. And at the last minute, Arafat walked away. And, everyone's, kind of, looking at this and looking back and going, why did that happen? And, why the PLO, they would have had better status as to, what's going on today. And my own personal insight is this, Arafat, when he came to the States, I protected him. So I was around him and his personnel, over the years. And he enjoyed this status, rock star status. Okay. He had a place in France, and he was a millionaire. He was living large, and the PLO, the personnel may have not been living as good as him, but the leadership was. And what would have happened if they became a legitimate country and he had these concessions? Well, there's no more fight. So he was a fighter. Back in the 80s, the Israelis were chasing him up in Juni in Lebanon, and he jumped on a boat and got out of there just in the nick of time. They said he was like a cat that had 9 lives. Many a times, he was in the sights or the crosshairs of the Israelis and escaped it. So when the fight's gone and your cause is going, and you have to legitimize now this country and become more mainstream, rather than being what I used to call that shop steward. You complain all the time, and you get sympathy and money and all this stuff. When that dries up and they tell you now you got to be management, it's a whole different ballgame. So with Arafat, he's no longer the oppressor. He is now, or the oppressed, he is now legitimate, and he has to perform. And when that's all gone, it was easier for him probably to be that woe is me, look at us, we're the oppressed, money comes in and play that role, rather than be a new statesman on the world stage and have to deliver.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of different theories around that. It's just my own personal theory. When you see people, when you take them out of the role they've known their whole life, and, and their money and the status they have as being that renegade that's out there, and, we've been oppressed by Israel and the U.S. and all this, and they get funding and stuff. When that all goes away and you have to become mainstream, it's a whole different ballgame. So that's just my 2 cents on it, Neil.
Okay. So, where do you think those peace talks look today?
Wow. I mean, if you look at it, they're meeting in Qatar right now. Israel, hit one of the top Hamas leaders, over in Iran, and
Yeah.
I think things are pretty deep right now. So the peace talks, if they can get a ceasefire, that's a big step. But after that, I have no idea. Again, what's it going to look like if they get a ceasefire? They got to get the hostages back. There's a lot of different steps that have to happen,
Yeah.
and the wounds are so deep. It's like a modern day Hatfield McCoy over ideology versus just something that happened. So this thing goes deep, way, way, way back, generations and generations. And right now, they're getting a lot of support on the world court there. These pro-Hamas, they're showing the kids and women being killed and things like that. And whether it's been orchestrated from Iran to do that and take it outside of the Middle East and project it onto the big screen, which is the rest of the world, then they're doing a pretty good job. I mean, look at what's happening here in the U.S. They're really diving down and getting people to support Hamas, and through this use of the terms genocide and all this, when in fact it's more of what Hamas has done. They've kind of integrated themselves into the people of where does the Hamas terrorists stop and people's support of that begin or end. It's they're in churches, they're in schools. They've integrated themselves into the modern day world in Gaza that you just can't separate that out. So you have a lot of sympathizers. So that's created this whole different group of either pro-Israel or pro-Hamas. And, Europe's all around demonstrations of being, pro-Palestinian with, hey, children and people are getting killed by the Israelis. At the same time, Israel's in a fight for their life. I mean, people don't realize Israel, there's 16 million Jews worldwide. Close to 8 million are here in the United States, and like 7.5 are in Israel, and another 500,000 are spread around the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in the fight for their life right now. And it's easy for people, thousands of miles away to judge and say this and pick it apart because of the internet, social media, and the news, and feel like you've been there, but not feel what they feel, suffering every day. I mean, at any day they could wake up and, that barrage of missiles or rockets that came in from Iran back in the spring that the Iron Dome knocked down, that could happen again, just like that.
Yeah.
So they're living, in a high tense situation all the time over there, and they're in for their survival.
What kind of a future will we be looking at if there was some sort of like, we get a ceasefire and now we have peace talks? Are we looking at a future like modern day Bosnia, where you have, still animosity towards everybody? You had genocide just, 20, 25 years ago, and now you're trying to get along
those
and be
wounds.
peaceful?
It could be just like that. That's a good analogy there, because it's not going to end with just people signing on the dotted line and we have peace now, because you have generations now and generations of this hatred, and it's not going to end overnight. It's not going to end in a year. And, it's going to go on because, since the founding of Israel in 48, as a separate state, this has been an underlining thing with the Palestinians and the refugee camps. I mean, I was dealing with in Israel. They have one of the world's largest refugee camps, over 500,000 of Palestinians in the Aina Helway camp up there. And so what's going to happen to them? They're people without a country, without a status.
Yeah.
So all these things have to be in consideration. It's not just saying, well, we're going to stop the incursion of Israel going into Gaza. This is a really deep, people have been working these peace talks for decades, and they haven't come to a full agreement. So
Yeah,
it's probably one of the most complicated political situations in the world as we know it right now.
yeah, no, I don't see it. I don't see it happening very easily or happening anytime
No.
soon.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
it's
see it in
definitely.
my lifetime either of how, what's it going to look like? I mean, I don't know. Gaza was one of the most densely populated places on earth prior to the attack. And, not to put the words out there, but, they call it one of the world's largest slums.
Yeah,
So now it's been bombed for the last 10 months. You know what it looks like. You see the pictures. Um,
Haiti might look better.
what's the rebuild? What's it going to look like in the future? And what's the governing around that? And how are these people going to be allowed access, and where do they go? Because they don't come in and out of Israel.
Yeah, yeah. I was just saying, Haiti might look better than Gaza.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done time there, and that's a pretty bleak place too right
Yeah,
now
I know.
because we've spent billions in that place, and they can't get on their feet down there either.
Can't wait for us to spend billions in Gaza as well in the near future.
Yeah, exactly, and we probably will
Yeah,
in the rebuild in there. I mean, that and the Ukraine right now are just the two biggest foreign policy situations that have no end in sight right now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thanks, Fred, for your thoughts and topics on and opinions on how the resolution is going to look. Appreciate your history of being there, seeing some of it firsthand.
yeah, great. Thanks, Neil.